Welcome back to the Joseph Graham Show, where we help you build epic lives. Today I have a special guest, Rob. I'm going to say it wrong. Doggone it. I thought about it and then I went to do it. I'm going to try it, Rob, and tell me if I'm wrong. Anspach. Did I do it right?
Anspach. That's right.
Almost like Spock. Sorry. I
That's
thought
right.
about that aspect of it. So, like we were talking beforehand, we met, I can't remember who it was, but we both in the same circle, same spaces. Like we know Steve and other people. And I was on your show a little bit ago. But for people that don't know you too well yet, or maybe haven't heard about you, tell us who you are, what you do, and who you help.
Well, in a nutshell, I am a former carpet cleaning entrepreneur turned marketing consultant, book writer, and I spent 19 years in the carpet cleaning trenches, being an entrepreneur, being a service-oriented business. And in 2001, I started this consulting company, and I ran both companies simultaneously for a couple years. Well, about a dozen years. And then when I wrote my first book, which was a social media book called Share, I sold the cleaning business because the book took off. And I've been doing the consulting full time, for the last 10 years. And in those 10 years, developed, well, published 43 books so far.
That you just said it like, oh, I did 43 books so far. That's a lot of books. So when you were doing the carpet cleaning and all, were you a writer before that? Did you like writing? Have you always been
I
drawn to that?
did do some writing for cleaning magazines. There was a magazine called Clean Facts that would have me, submit an article here and there, and that really got me hooked. So, I took all that information and I thought, you know what, I'm helping all these cleaners anyway with their marketing. Why not expand it out? But I really didn't know at the time that, because now most of my clients are lawyers, doctors, high-level entrepreneurs, and very little are carpet cleaners anymore. But, early on, a lawyer had noticed one of my articles and he says, "Hey, can you write for me? Can you do this? Can you?" So I did. And he started referring me to everybody. And so over the years, I thought, you know what? I can still help cleaners if they want. But the lawyers, the doctors, the high-level entrepreneurs are actually the kind of the demographic, the avatar that I was looking for anyway, because they give me enough work that I can take vacations, I can have more freedom, the cleaning industry by and large runs 24 hours a day. And so I'd have cleaners contact me all the time. They'd text me at 2 in the morning. And it was like, I can't just be a marketer 24 hours a day. I got a family. I want to have freedom. I want to do, go on vacation. And it
Yeah.
just, it wasn't working the way I wanted, and I had to make some changes.
Just listening to you say that. So you have the entrepreneurial spirit, the bug, whatever you're doing the carpet cleaning, and then it sounds like you started helping carpet cleaners with marketing and you wrote your first book. But then you were like, it was like you still had a job in a way because you were bound to it, you were stuck to it. You weren't getting the true freedom because there's sometimes people can do businesses, but they're still chained to that business. So it's just you got a new job. We'll just call it what it is. But
Mhm.
then you found your niche, you found people that you could help, but that you could create a life you love. Did you
Mhm.
just fall into that or was that planned? How
No,
did
it
that
was it
happen?
was it was the lessons that I learned from the cleaning business that, after 19 years of doing it, I was like, okay, these are the things I don't want to do anymore. So how do I take those, you know, I, I don't want to say, take all the bad stuff because I learned a lot of stuff from that bad stuff. So, in the end, it really was more life lessons that I learned. I said, how can I turn it into a business that not only am I helping others, but I'm also helping myself. And so, what I started to do right off the bat was reduce the hours I was putting into the consulting business. I was not going to be available to everybody. After a certain period of time during the day, I would shut it off, spend time with the family. But over the years, I've actually made that even better. So I'm only in front of the computer probably 2 or 3 hours a day. I only put in max 4 hours a day on the business. And people are like, And my neighbors, I'm outside working in my yard. My neighbors like, what do you do? You're always home. It's like, yeah, it's because I have my business now on autopilot. I know what I have to do when I have to do it. I'm up in the morning, get the stuff done. By lunchtime, I'm done.
Mhm.
And we're producing 4 or 5 books a year. We're developing marketing and SEO and social media for our clients. And people are like, I just don't get it. How do you get all that stuff done? And I say because of all the lessons I learned from running a full-time business for 19 years, I'm able to develop skills and systems and outcomes that allow me not to work as hard as I used to. But it
You've
takes
taken
time.
all the experience. Yeah, you've taken the experience you had. You knew what it took to build a business. You had the ins and outs of that. And then you're like, okay, cool. Now I'm going to, you start slowing it down by doing the consulting less. Then you're like, okay, cool. How can I work 4 hours a day, make as much money as I want, whatever that number is, and do what I want to do? And I think so many times we get caught up in the new shiny instead of what works for us. Because everyone has
Mhm.
this new thing. If you just follow this guy, you're going to win, or that guy. In reality, you got to follow what works for you and how it's set up and build your teams and systems. So, for someone new that's just starting out in the entrepreneurial world, what would you tell them is the biggest key to learn in the beginning?
To use your personality as your brand. For me, it was even when I started this consulting business, I had my sarcasm. Everybody knows me as Mr. Sarcasm. And all my cleaning clients knew me as Mr. Sarcasm. But I thought, okay, well, I'm getting into the consulting business. These are lawyers, these are doctors, these are people with no sense of humor, and they've all gone to the school, the Vulcan school of no emotion.
Mm.
So how do I adapt? How do I become more human to them or teach them how to become more human to their clients? And I thought, well, this being PC, be very careful on social media crap isn't working. So let me just give them my sarcasm. And the funny thing is the more that I brought my personality to the forefront, the more people would say, "Hey, Rob, I want to hire you because you're so funny. You're so entertaining. You're not so serious."
Mhm.
And so that became my brand. And so I launched a series of books called Rob Versus. And it's my sarcastic take on scammers, on morons, and lousy customer service. And it started out as one book. Now there's 8, and I have 2 more coming out the end of this year. And people love those books because they entertain, they make people laugh, and there's only just a smidge of business advice in them. And so people are like, well, Rob, this is just great. I love this book. This book saved me from getting ripped off, or it saved me from this. I felt like a fly on a wall listening to your conversation. And you know, that prompted me, that style of writing prompted me to also, you know, take the conversations that I had with other people, like Steve Gamlin, and make a whole book called, Unscripted, Unfiltered, Unwoo-woo, and Unguru. And there it's just me talking to Steve. And it's a transcript book. But as you read it, you're like, wow, these 2 guys have been where I want to be. And they've learned all these things. And wow, that's 30 years of experience right there in that book. And it's I, I don't write books typical of what you see out there, you know, where it's J.K. Rowling telling a story of Harry Potter. My books are geared to, unleashing my personality so that people can, when they're reading, it's like they're having a conversation with me.
Mhm.
And so when they meet me in real life, they're like, wow, it's like I've known you my entire life because I've read your books and now I'm meeting you and it's the same. I know so many people who have read books from so-called, big authors, and then they go to meet them for the first time and they're like,
Mhm.
your personality doesn't match your book.
Yeah, where's your ghostwriter?
Yeah. So I try to, even when I'm writing books for other people, I try to give their books their personality. I interview them just like we're doing here,
Mhm.
and I try to match that personality so it gets in that book. So you know that when you're reading it, you're picking up on the nuances, their tones, their voice, and yeah, it's tough. But the thing is those are the things that I learned when I was cleaning carpet because when I go into homes, or when I went into homes, the majority of my clients were women,
Mhm.
you know, and their husbands are at work, they're scared, they don't want some strange guy coming into their home. But if I can, break that ice, make them laugh, be funny while I'm cleaning their carpet, they don't have a sense of, hey, this guy's gonna rip me off. He's here to do a job, and and so that's I always try to make people um, feel safe with me. And so when we went through COVID, everybody was like, "Well, Rob, on social media, you got to know, like, and trust somebody." And I said, "And feel safe." And so I've
Yes.
always added that "and feel safe" to it because, after COVID, people didn't trust anybody. They didn't feel
Mhm.
safe with anybody. And so, my whole premise in my consulting business is I have to make you feel safe. If you don't feel safe, you're not going to hire me.
No,
You're not
you
going to
you
feel
mentioned
comfortable.
yeah, you mentioned a bunch of different things, and I want to go back to make sure they didn't miss it. You decided to go against the norm of what everyone was doing and just build your brand, put yourself into it. And I love what you do with that books because I was listening to a teaching today on a mastermind group I'm in, and they were talking about how most people read at a third grade level. Not that you write at a third grade level, but sometimes you
Oh, I
write
write
something
it that.
you had to you had to dumb it. But you know what I mean? Like I know these super smart people and they have all these degrees, and then you read what they wrote and you're like, I kind of understand what you're saying because but then like to
Well,
get
see,
it to
that
where
was
the
right.
masses can get it.
That was the premise of every book that I write is that I have to keep it simple. So
Mhm.
every single book is no greater than 200 pages, because especially like this one, we wrote this for a client, the empathetic lawyer. And if you go through it, it's 120 pages max. So you pick up a book like this, you don't feel intimidated. You know,
Yeah.
you can sit down and read it in one shot, an hour or so of your life. You're done. You're like, oh, that was a great book. It was simple, and there's lots of stories in the books. And so, if you can keep your book like 120 pages to 200 pages max, I mean, the Unguru book is 200 pages, but keep them simple. Keep it so that the average person, whether it's third grade, fifth grade, 12th grade, they can all understand it.
Well, you keep it simple, and then you said the other thing. Like and trust is great, but when they feel safe is when they get their pocketbooks out. When they feel
Mhm.
safe. I did carpet cleaning when I was like 19 or 20-year old. And I remember going into houses and there was always an older guy with me. And it was weird sometimes because I would always know which guy I was right with. There was the guy that was kind of like the creepy guy that you didn't want to go with because it made me feel uncomfortable. Then there was the guy that was like, he was just very businesslike. And then I ended up getting to run the trucks for a while. So I would just go in and be like, hey, how can I help you? Like you said, make them smile, make them relax. And that's the same thing with business online or
Mhm.
in person. They need to know that you know what you're talking about. They need to know that it's about them. And then they need to know that you're not going to screw them over. Like it's basic principles, but because there's so much fake crap out there, like we were talking about earlier, it's hard to shift through. So I'm going to ask you this because you wrote books on it all. How do you help people spot the fake from the real? And I'm not talking about the 18-year-old with the Lambo because pretty much anyone can catch that's daddy's money unless it was like some whiz kid. But like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of them out there that are like, are they real? Are they not? How do you help people with that?
Here's the problem with social media. It makes everybody look legit,
Mhm.
but people don't actually dive deep into Google. Hey, who is this person? If I type their name or their business into Google, what am I going to find? And if you type my name, Rob Anspach, you're going to see all the books that I've written. You're going to see links to my various websites. You're going to podcasts, whatnot. That's legit. But if I type in someone's name and it's like, there's nothing here, or the only thing that's there is an F from the Better Business Bureau, you better run. You better, go somewhere else, hire someone else. But they don't do their due diligence. And so, you get these texts with these bogus links, and people are like, wow, I won $500. Did you enter
Yeah.
something? Well, no, they just randomly, and they believe that stuff, and they click the link, and next thing they know, their bank account's compromised. And I'm like, people, but it happens all the
It
time.
Well, I think it's because people are so into the get rich quick, give me the secret instead of putting the work in, building the brand, building the business, and doing it right. Because the flashy is great, but the flashy doesn't get anything done. Like the flashy
No,
looks cool, but I'd rather deal with someone that has like you've written over 40 books, you understand the process, you run a podcast, you do a marketing, that you have credibility, like you said, instead of the other. That's just wild to me.
well, it's also the long game. And I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years. I've seen shit that will make people's toes curl. The problem is that, we're in a society now where everybody wants instant results. Netflix gave us binge watching. Well, shit, you go onto social media now, it's binge scrolling.
Yeah.
They just want instant stuff. And you can't have instant success. You have to work at it. It's like gardening. You have to plant the seed, you got to nurture, you got to water. And after a while, whether it be 6 months, a year, you finally cultivate whatever you planted. And it takes time. But, people are like, well, I'm just going to start a business, hang a shingle out, and it's like the saying, build it and they will come. No, they won't.
No,
They
they
won't
won't at
come.
all. The only people coming at that point is the government to get their money.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah, it's an illusion,
Mhm.
but they don't want to put in the long game. They don't, well, Rob, you've been doing it for 30 years. You don't know anything about the new stuff. It's like, the new stuff is just shiny object stuff. Come on, people, don't get distracted. But
Yeah.
it is what it
And
is.
it's like you said, they want to shorten the game the wrong way. Like
Mhm.
hiring coaches, hiring people that actually have experience is good. And I always tell people, look, what have they actually done? And I get into arguments on a lot of people that have they actually done this? I'm not going to hire a 20-year life coach. I'm not going to hire someone in sales that doesn't know how to sell. I'm not going to. But then again, I also tell people, I do sales coaching, right? But I'm not going to tell you how to build your business. I'm going to refer you to someone I know that can do it because I'm still building mine. That's a different game. I'm just niche here. Find out what they're good at and use that. Like,
Oh, I love people on LinkedIn that they say they're life coaches and they're only 5 minutes out of kindergarten. It's like, dude, how are you a life coach? It's like, you know, how much life have you even experienced yet?
I'm 20 years older than you. Don't take this wrong. If we're talking some tech thing that's new and you're better at it than me, which there are some younger people that are really good, 100%, I will talk to you. But there's other things I'm like, no, but you mentioned some which I liked. You're like, everyone wants the new shiny thing, and that's why they keep getting hit with the gimmick. The success is boring. It's doing that right process over and over each and every day. And I think people just don't like the boring. They want it to be the Disney movie, and it's not. In the Disney movie, you're not getting Prince Charming, you're getting Pepe Le Pew at the end of the day with it.
I love Disney. I go to Disney frequently because I,
Yep.
I always learn new things. And whether you go to Disney World, whether you go to Disneyland, it doesn't matter. You could go to the corner mall, but watch people, watch what they do, watch their nuances, watch their body language, and you can learn a lot of things by watching people. And so when I go to Disney World, I watch. And I can see the people that are angry, the people that are mad, the people, and you can actually just go up to them and do a pattern interrupt,
Hmm.
and they're like, oh, okay. And you can get them to do the things that you want them to do. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that if people studied people,
Hmm.
your sales would be better. And I'm not saying do it for nefarious reasons, but what I'm doing is if you can pattern interrupt somebody, you don't have to sell them anything, but you can get them to start thinking a little differently. And if they think a little differently, they're going to come back and say, well, you know what? You were right, you
Mhm.
know, and I want to know more about you. And if they get to know you a little bit better, they're going to buy from you.
Yep.
You know, I hear people all the time, oh, Disney this, Disney that, and they're saying all these negative things, but it doesn't stop them from going back there. They continue to go back. They continue to spend their money, even though it's cost a lot of money, because they're what they're doing is they're chasing after that feel good feeling,
Mhm.
and they know one day they're going to capture it at no matter what the cost. So if you can actually make a client feel better quicker, you
Mhm.
solve all their problems.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I love that. Disney actually has it down. Like my son is a big Star Wars fan, and it's like May 8th right now. So we went on May the 4th to watch The Phantom Menace. Do you know how many, and he's 19. Do you know how many times I've seen The Phantom Menace? A ton. But he wanted to go spend time with me. It was nostalgic because when he was a little kid, it was the first one. It was his Star Wars. Like I was born in
Mhm.
77, so I had the originals. But so we went there, and I'm just thinking about that with life. If you can make your business be their first Star Wars, you win.
Mhm.
Disney has been great at that aspect of cultivating, making it into that dream, that aspiration, that thing that draws you back. And that's what you really want to do with your business.
Mhm. Yeah, you have to create a culture or an experience that they can come back and experience over and over again. I mean, I went to Disney last year and I rode Tron for the first time. And I waited in line for like an hour. So the anticipation is building up. And when I was a kid, I saw the original Tron, and then in 2010, I saw the Tron Legacy. And so, for me, Tron is awesome. But that anticipation of going through that attraction was just amazing. And then I got on the ride and the exhilaration of that roller coaster going through. Oh man, it was overwhelming. And I felt like I was actually in, that game,
Mhm.
that world, that digital world. Same with Rise of the Resistance at Disney. Again, an experience. And so I'm not saying it's you design a ride for your clients. What I'm trying to say is you design an experience that they will tell their friends about
Mhm.
consistently, time and time again. And whether it's a book that I wrote, a podcast, whatever, you make them feel like they're the most special person on earth, and 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 they can receive that experience over and over again. And it's Disney has mastered that. And so I try to learn from that every time I go to the parks, because for me it's not just about being entertained, it's about studying the nuances of what they're doing, about studying the people's the people that ride the rides, their reactions. Again, I'm watching people. And so for me it was I would never be able to work at Disney because I'm so sarcastic. I think after 5 minutes I'd be fired. But I love going there.
Yeah. Well, but again, I'm just thinking of how their model is made, and I can't remember who told me this, but they have like three different rooms, which is kind of cool. They have the creative room, then they have the critique room, but it's not what you think. It's not like they're being crappy at. They're trying to find anything that they can clause to fix, like to do, and then they have the implementation room. And I probably said it the wrong way. They have probably whoever said it had a cooler way of saying it, but I just
Mhm.
love it because in the big dream big room, there's no limit. In the critique room, you're trying to find any hole so that you can protect the vision. And then in the implementation room, they take those two and put it together and make the magic. And I think
Mhm.
that's kind of what we do with our dreams and our plans to help people, you with your books, with the marketing, me with sales coach, with whatever we're doing. We're trying to take their fuzzy dreams, not put limits on it, show them where the faults are so that they can build a life they love. I just that Disney analogy hit my head when you said that. So I like that a lot. Um, You also podcast, so you do a lot of stuff, Rob. Like you do podcasting, you do the media, you do book writing. I'm assuming you probably speak on stages too. We haven't gotten to any of that yet. But what made you decide, oh, I just want to do a podcast now with everything else that you were doing?
Well, in 2017, I wrote a series of books, or I co-authored a series of books, and one of them was called Power Guesting, and it taught people how to be better guests on a podcast. And I co-authored that with a gal who had been on hundreds of podcasts. And at the time, I had only had my first podcast, which I started in 2010, which fizzled by 2011 because I just couldn't get people to want to be part. Back then it was like people were like, "What's a podcast?" Now you say
Yeah.
podcast, and everybody knows what a podcast is. So I had this book, but and this was 2017. I didn't have a podcast of my own. It's like, well,
You're
Rob,
like,
you wrote the book. Where's your podcast? So a year later, I launched eHeroes, and we're still running the podcast. I'm almost at the 300th episode mark, and I've interviewed brilliant people. I mean, you were on the show, and there's been a few like Steve Gamlin who was on 7 times, and it was at that moment I thought after the 7th time, hey, this will make a great book just because of the evolution of 7 episodes over 5 years, and people love the book, and so I've turned a lot of people's podcasts into books. I've turned their YouTube shows into books, but then I've also helped them write their stories in the books. And so you know taking your content, whether it be a podcast, whether it be a YouTube show, and recycling that into a book where people could then take it anywhere. Because people have taken books on beaches and up in the mountains where there's no cell service, where you can't get a podcast, and they actually physically read a book. I know that's foreign to some people. Like, what are you talking about? I just get all my books on Kindle. I hate Kindle.
yeah,
I can't tell you the last time I even read a book on my device.
mm.
I prefer paper. I prefer so it just
If you look behind me
so
here, I have books. Yep, there's something about a book, but I think that I love what you do because you found a way to repurpose their information back to the old school way, which makes more sense that people can take anywhere, but they wouldn't think about because everyone's digital, 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 digital. But if you're doing branding and then talking about stages and stuff, and everybody that gets on stage light, he goes, the one thing that will determine between the two of you, if you're about equal, is if one has a book and one doesn't. A lot of times they're going to lean toward the person with the book only because they have something in written form that they can give. I had another
Mhm.
guy that did it. He uses it as like his calling card. It's
Yeah.
like a small little book, but when he meets people, instead of giving them a business card, he gives them a book. And it's powerful because you're branding yourself, but you're standing out differently. So I like that. Again, the Disney creative in you coming out. Maybe
Well,
Disney should hire you.
I would love that. But in 2015, I wrote a book called Lessons from the Dojo. And I have a group page on social or on Facebook called the Business Dojo. And I had launched that in 2014. And so I took almost a year's worth of quotes that I shared on this group, and I turned them all into a book. So every page is a new lesson. There's 101 lessons. And so I put the quote up top, and then I put my opinion, my thoughts on it. And so, I set it up so that as you go through the book, you start off as a beginner and then a white belt, and you go through the belts. And then towards the end of the book, you're this black belt or this master. And people like the book because they could just put it up, pick it up, put it down, turn the page, get a new lesson. And but when I launched the book, I picked a date that we were going to launch the book. I didn't realize that was the same week I was going to be in Italy with my wife. So the launch fizzled.
Mm.
But I'm like, well, I'm in Italy. I don't care at this point.
Yeah, I'm having
Yeah,
fun.
and
It's
it
great. Yeah.
it took another year, a year or two for the book to actually take off and make money. But people love it because it's just simple. It's just, hey, there's 101 kick butt ways to improve your life, business, and relationships. And every page is a new lesson. So, it
Yeah.
was just it was a concept that I thought was going to work out. It didn't work out right away. I think the book was too early in people's philosophy, but it did over time. And so you look at Disney, back to Disney. They launch these movies because they feel that it's time for this movie to be told, and the movie tanks. You know, and maybe it doesn't pick up a cult following until years down the road. You know, but it happens to all of us. We have these great ideas, and I'm going to tell everybody, you have a great idea, launch it anyway. I don't care what people say. My Rob versus the Scammers book was the very first Rob versus book. 9 out of 10 people loved it. The 10th person said, well, Rob, it's just a book of collection of stories. I don't get it. And had I listened to that person, I would have never launched the whole that one book that turned into almost a 10 book series.
Hmm.
And now I'm writing a pilot script for that to eventually, hopefully, be a future TV show. So, if you listen to the naysayers, you're never going to get anything done.
Yeah.
So listen to your heart. If you have a product or an idea, launch it anyway.
There's always going to be naysayers anyway, and they're the ones that typically are afraid to do what they need to do anyway. And they're the ones that will laugh in the beginning, but then want to hire you in the end because you actually went and did the thing that they were afraid to do. No, I love that a lot. I think too many times we get so worried about being laughed at. And in reality, if you look back through history, everyone that got laughed at that we know about was super successful. And worst case scenario, we're going to get laughed at anyway. Like I've been married 22 years. I make my wife laugh at me every day. So why am I getting upset if some joker I don't know laughs at me? Like I think we just get too caught up in ourselves instead of you don't know who it's going to affect or help. Like you
Yeah,
don't know that might be the thing. You didn't know which one of your books was going to take off, but it just did. You mentioned the long game. It's just
yeah,
testing and trying and seeing what the market wants. So
yeah. And
I
and the
think
thing
that's
is
brilliant.
that I thought the very first book did take off, and it sold thousands of copies, and that's what convinced me to sell the cleaning business, go full time into consulting. And the second book I wrote, I co-authored with a gentleman up in Canada, and it was all about SEO. And it was optimize this, how two carpet cleaners, outrank I forget what the exact of it. It's been a long time. But the thing is that we came up with a concept, we wrote the book, we got it on Amazon, #1 bestseller in 4 countries, and we did it in 60 days. So, is the book, you know, uh, the book is still relevant today. There's a lot of SEO concepts in there that'll still work.
Mhm.
Is it a masterpiece? No. Is there errors in it? Yes. And people have called us out on them. And I'm like, did you write a book? No. Did your book go #1 bestseller in 4 countries? No.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if you always listen to the people that have crap to say, your brain's going to say, well, maybe I shouldn't continue to do this.
yeah.
And so, if I would have stopped at the first book or the second book or the third book, in most people's minds, hey, the average person will never write a book.
True.
And then the average author only writes 3 books.
Oh,
For
I
me
didn't know
to
that.
do 43 books in 10 years or 11 years,
Yeah.
I'm going to keep on pushing out content until I die or someone tells me, hey, you know, or a whole bunch of people know you can't do this anymore. Because
No,
to
you would
me,
still do it. You would still do it. I know you well enough. You would still do it. It's the first one. When you pass, that's when you'll stop.
but
Because
the
you're
thing is,
you're
I never know which book will be a success. I don't know which
Mhm.
one will be a failure. I still write them. I still produce them. I still get them out there because you just don't know. And yeah, you can do all this data science and you can say, well, I can have the best keywords. I can do this. I can, but ultimately it's, you know, roll the dice sometimes.
Well, yeah, because I know you've dealt with this. You'll write something, you put a post out, you think this is going to be the best post ever, and it's cricket. Then you half throw something out because I know I've done it too. Like, this I just feel this. I'm going to write it and walk away, and I come back. There's 100 comments. I'm like, what the hell? How did this one make sense and that one? In reality, it's just the market telling you what they need right at the moment.
Yeah.
Because we have all these ideas, but as an entrepreneur, I'm going to ask you this after wrapping up. You go into the future and you create something that's not there and you pull it back into the now. How have you so I how do you normally get your ideas? I want to get in your brain there a little bit. Do you just get an idea and go after it, or where do you how do you formulate it? Because everyone has different processes.
Well, it's, I'm going to tell you the secret to where I get most of my thinking done. And some people may laugh at me, but I still push mow my own yard. I have a half acre. And when I'm out there push mowing, I wear my headphones. I listen to my 80s music. And as I'm walking the path to mow the yard, that's where I get inspired by new things. And there's a lot of people that are like, well, Rob, that's kind of dumb. Well, that's me. You know what? This is how I do things. This is,
Mhm.
I think everybody needs that time alone to think about stuff. Yeah, I'm also getting stuff done. And the reason I push mow is because I'm at a desk a lot. I don't get a lot of exercise. Mowing the yard gives me that exercise. So I'm getting my exercise, listening to great music, getting inspired. And so it's kind of time alone. Now, looking into the future, I see a lot of things that are still relevant. What we do today, even stuff in the past going into the future, but technology changes so quickly. I mean, look at AI right now. That's the new shiny object. And people don't know if they should love it or fear it. I say embrace it, use it. Have I toyed with it? Yes. But you can actually tell the AI exactly what you want done,
Yep.
and it'll do it. If you're not specific, like most people aren't with their marketing, the results you get are going to be piss poor. And then you're going to say it doesn't work. So you take the AI, you're very specific in what you want it to do. Hey, write me, an article that does this, this, and this. I want it in my voice, and I want it a sarcastic kind of tone to it. And if you've already fed it stuff that you've written, it'll spit out stuff that, oh my God, it sounds just like you. But if you say, well, just write me an article on this subject, it'll spit out the most generic thing. It won't sound like you. People are like, well, that was it written by AI. And so,
I'm with you. I'm with you. That's what
take
I
it.
did. No, I was gonna say that's what I did when it first came out with ChatGPT and all. Because I had someone on my show even before ChatGPT. Because I'm in the AI world. I like that stuff. I like the technology. I don't think it's Terminator. I make the joke about, but and I did a little test. I'm like, write this in my voice, da 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 da, on this thing, and then I wrote it myself. And it was you could tell there was differences. I put it out, and they actually said the AI voice was more my voice than mine when I did the test. I'm like, oh, really? So
Mhm.
it is. It's all on how you prompt it, how you do it. I use it for grammar for sure because I have dyslexia and I
Mhm.
miss letters at times. So for me, AI has been very helpful in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not saying it's for everyone. I've had, but yeah, here's the thing is we're in this day and age where amateurs now have the same tools or the same level playing field as professionals. And so when you look at this, you're going, okay, well, I can hire that guy for cheaper because it looks and it appears like he's doing the same thing as you, Rob, or I can hire you and spend more money. And so people are going to the cheaper resources. And that's fine until they get to that moment where they realize that
Oops.
cheap guy didn't know what he was doing and it cost him a lot more money.
Mhm.
So, look, I don't have the answers for everybody, but I've been doing this for a long time. I've seen things that, like I said, are terrible. But you know what? Sometimes it's better to hire the professional to get the job done the right way than hire someone that's cheaper that end up costing you more money.
Well, cheaper's never better. Actually, most of the times people want to be in the middle because there's people out there that are a little bit too crazy and maybe they want to charge $30,000 for something that's really worth 10. Okay, cool. I got that. I'm not gonna pay 30,000, but you get what you paid for. You
Mhm.
always get what you pay for. If it sounds too good to be true, it's too good to be true. You trust your instinct. But before I let you go, Rob, where can people find you, connect with you, get your books and all that cool stuff?
Well, they can get my books on Amazon. You can go into type in the URL getrobsbooks.com and that'll take you right to Amazon. Or you can go to my website, anspachmedia.com, and there you'll find the books as well, but you'll find more information about what we do, how we do it, and the services that we offer.
I love it. So, one last question for you before we go. Is there anything that we've not touched base on that could help someone that maybe they're starting their business out, maybe they want to write a book? Any last words of wisdom you want to leave our listeners?
If you want to write a book, what I would say is instead of sitting down one day or even a weekend and trying to come up with all the information that's in your head onto paper, jot down every single day, a paragraph here and there. Okay? Nothing big, just jot down your thoughts. What you'll discover is within 6 months or a year, all that content that you've already created can be turned into a book very easily. So
That was brilliant and simple. Again, sometimes simple and brilliant works way better than flashy and shiny. Thank you again for being on, Rob. And like you said, I'm just going to challenge you to do that every day. Write a paragraph of your life and make it into content that you can use to help others.